Good evening, everyone. Uh, Cambodia Ambassador to Singapore, His Excellency Sokyon. Mexico Ambassador to Singapore, His Excellency Agustin Garcia Lopez Lausa. President of Ngi An Kongsi and Chairman of the Ngi An Kongsi Donation and Charity Subcommittee, Dr. Wu Chao Ching. Senior Vice President, ASEAN HCL Tech, Mr. Sandeep Sarkar. Regional Sales Director, HCL Tech, Mr. Gautam Y.S. Chief Executive Officer of National Gallery Singapore, Ms. Chong Siak Ching. Sorry, Siak. The boss. Museum Director of National Gallery Singapore, Dr. Eugene Tan, artists, colleagues, distinguished guests. A very warm welcome to National Gallery Singapore. Thank you very much for joining us for our keynote lecture titled Video Vanguard, Channeling Body, Society, and Spirit in Southeast Asia by Dr. Edwin Jurriëns, which also marks the launch of the second part of the exhibition See Me, See You, Early Video Installation of Southeast Asia. See Me, See You, Early Video Installation of Southeast Asia is a two-part exhibition offering a fascinating look at the pivotal moments when video installation or installation with video or video within installation first emerged in the 1980s and 1990s. It is at once a survey and a close reading of 10 pioneering Southeast Asian artists who through inventive exploration and decisive experimentation, anticipated or inaugurated another form of art involving moving image, installation, performance, and collective action. Many of these works have not been exhibited for decades, and through careful restaging and remaking, we hope more people, especially all of you who are here with us tonight, will get to experience these artworks up close. And we will be able to do just that very soon after the lecture. The first installment of this project, which concluded in early September of this year, featured works by Apinan Posyonanda of Thailand, Barudin Mod Arus of Malaysia, Chung Nai Wee of Singapore, Johnny Manahan of the Philippines, and Jean Marie Sihuko of the Philippines. Today we are here to open See Me, See You Part 2, consisting of works by Heri Dono from Indonesia, Asnul Saidun from Malaysia, Ray Langenbach from Malaysia, Vincent Liao from Singapore, and the late Krishnamurti from Indonesia. And we are honored tonight by the presence of three of the artists, Asnul, Saidun, Heri Dono, and Ray Langenbach. We are equally honored to have Dr. Edwin Jurriëns present his keynote lecture, Video Vanguard, Channeling Body, Society, and Spirit in Southeast Asia. A prolific scholar and interlocutor of the visual and media culture in Indonesia, Dr. Jurriëns is convener and associate professor of Indonesian Studies at the Asia Institute, Faculty of Arts, the University of Melbourne. His main research interests lie in environmental and socially engaged art and media. His publications include The Art of Environmental Activism in Indonesia, Shifting Horizons to 2023, and Visual Media in Indonesia, Video Vanguard in 2017, as well as the edited volume Digital Indonesia, Connectivity and Divergence in 2017, to cite the more recent ones. He is editor of the Asian Visual Cultures book series published by Amsterdam University Press and regional editor of the newsletter of the International Institute for Asian Studies, or IIAS. He has had fellowships with the Institute for Area Studies at Leiden University, Monash Art, Design and Architecture at Monash University in Melbourne, the Graduate Institute in Geneva, the University of New South Wales in Canberra, and IIAS in Leiden. He was co-convener of the 2016 Indonesia update of the Australian National University in Canberra. And I must add that Dr. Jurriëns has mentored scholars who have become important names in the field, like our very own Seng Eugene, and previously our very own Roger Nelson and Charmaine To. On that note, please join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Edwin Jurriëns.
Right, thank you very much for your kind words, Patrick. And also to the National Gallery Singapore for inviting me for this lecture, Director Dr. Eugene Tan. Also Dr. Seng Eugene and his team, Jaing, Clarissa, Jayun, Erica, Kalisha. Thank you very much for also making me feel very welcome. And giving me the opportunity earlier today to explore the exhibition and even have a few chats with some of the artists. Also, thank you very much to all the dignitaries for attending this lecture. And as mentioned, I wasn't expecting that at all, so it does put a little bit of pressure, but I think it's also really exciting to actually have the artists here, Harry Dono, Ray Langenbach, and Hasnul Saidon. Yeah, I think I see my role really as, trying to mediate between the exhibition, my own expertise, and the audience today. So hopefully it will generate some discussion which will be ongoing, and I think especially when it comes to video art, it's such an exciting field. It needs to be a collaborative project. It's by definition interdisciplinary and rely on a lot of people with different backgrounds, different expertise to continue the conversation really. So the exhibition has a very apt title, See You, See Me. And I think it refers exactly to what the artworks in this exhibition are doing, providing us with a mirror. This is more or less the overview of my lecture. I will start with an introduction, then go into this idea of the Vanguard and address some of the features that can be a trigger for further discussion. Video art as a process of channeling the body, society, and the spirit, as also reflected in the title. Then some examples from the exhibition, from the first part as well as the second part. And I also want to pay a special tribute by discussing some of the ideas and one of the works of Krishnamurti, who really was my own mentor, really the person who taught me about new media art. And then very briefly towards the end also reflect on some of the more recent initiatives, the younger generation, to what extent they are continuing, some of the explorations by this early generation, and also how they have been bringing new media art into new directions. Yeah, going back to the idea of See You, See Me, I think the works embody or encourage a strong sense of self-reflexivity. And this is partly facilitated by the use of video. But it's not so much about the artist using video as a medium to record reality, but more about video art making us reflect on our everyday interaction with this technology and other new media. And going back to these early video installations from the late 1980s and early 1990s makes us realize how much visual media, digital media, mobile media are ingrained in today's society, including the worlds of politics and business. So 3 decades ago, these artists had a critical capability and creative intuition and imagination to notice and share with the public that things were indeed to change, and perhaps dramatically and forever. This generation of artists marked a transition from the analog to the digital era. But they also had the courage to break with some of the conventions of the art world of their time by integrating unconventional media in their creative practice and facilitating direct interconnections between art, time, space, and audience. So these are more than sufficient reasons for the National Gallery Singapore to celebrate these artists and invite us to discover or rediscover and explore their pioneering work together. The other thing, of course, to notice is that all of these artists are from Southeast Asia, who have brought their own insights and approaches to these social and creative developments, as influenced by their upbringing, their education, their communities, their cultural surroundings, and any other aspects of their lives and interpersonal connections. Their art careers coalesced with the time, early 1990s, when modern and contemporary art from Southeast Asia finally started to receive the international recognition it should have obtained many decades before. And in my own research, I make a provocation that the artists and their work deserve to be placed at the center of an international avant-garde or vanguard of the digital age. And in my presentation today, I will try to explain why this provocation can be productive in understanding or appreciating the various works that are part of this exhibition. So I will move from the general and rather theoretical to the more concrete, specific and descriptive. So just, please bear with me for a few moments. So before going into the detail of some of the artists and their works, I will briefly delve into some art history relating to the notion of the creative vanguard. And I think that employing this idea can be risky, but there are also renowned art experts from the region who believe it can be eye-opening too. So one example, for instance, is the Indonesian art historian and curator Agung Hujatnikajanong. And Hujatnikajanong's analysis of the avant-garde is based on Peter Bürger's book Theory of the Avant-Garde from '84. And it follows Bürger's argument that the historical early 20th century avant-garde developed in reaction against the modernist principle of the autonomy of art. While traditional forms of creativity formed an integral part of social life and fulfilled practical purposes, modernist art was created in isolation of society and functioned to develop the aesthetic and philosophical potential of art itself, or as some artists and critics would say, art for art's sake. Ironically, the modernist ideal of artistic autonomy didn't lead to the liberation of creative work, or not necessarily, but to the institutionalization of its production, distribution, and consumption in the workshop, museums, art galleries, and auction houses that were managed by the wealthy and educated bourgeois elite. And avant-garde movements such as Dada developed in reaction to these trends and attempted to deinstitutionalize art and reintegrate it with the praxis of life, with everyday life. Another renowned art historian, Hall Foster, has criticized Bürger for treating the historical avant-garde as, and this is a quote, as an absolute origin whose aesthetic transformations are fully significant and historically effective in the first instance. And considering the avant-garde after the Second World War as merely neo, that cancelled the pre-war critique of the institution of art, end of the quote. But Foster himself, on the other hand, in his critique of Bürger, believes that the avant-garde continues in contemporary art practices through subtle displacements or strategic collaborations with all sorts of groups. In a more polemic way, the French art critic and curator Nicolas Bourriaud also argues in support of present-day art that it's, this is also a quote, roundly taking on and taking up the legacy of the 20th century avant-garde, while at the same time challenging the dogmatism and the teleological doctrines. To this I would add that avant-garde concerns have not only continued over time, but also dispersed over space. They are certainly not restricted to a loose grouping of North American and Western European artists, if they ever were, but have also been readdressed in very specific and often highly creative ways elsewhere in the world, including Southeast Asia. The international pioneer of video art and one of the key players in the Fluxus movement of the 1960s and 1970s, Nam June Paik, was actually a refugee from the Korean War, and he also studied art and music history in Japan at Tokyo University. Only then traveling to West Germany in the mid-1950s for continuing his studies. And he had a pivotal part in this Fluxus movement. So this in itself refutes obviously any easy distinctions between Western and other ideas and practices of contemporary art. But I argue that members of the pioneering and also following generations of Southeast Asian video artists, including the ones represented in this exhibition, can definitely be seen as a central part of the avant-garde of the digital age. So yeah, that brings us to 4 characteristics, which is still derived from Bürger's original theorization, that I would like you to keep in mind when exploring the artworks, because it might provide a useful framework for interacting and interpreting the works. So firstly, artists breaking with this modernist ideal of the autonomy of art, as promoted by formal institutions of art education and exhibition in various ways. They do so by engaging with the praxis of life, so their art is not isolated from real life, which is a second characteristic, avant-garde characteristic. Thirdly, they provide artistic newness through the exploration of different modes of representation and presentation, in which the creative process and the interaction with audiences and surrounding spaces is at least as important as the art objects themselves. And the first generation of video artists represented in this exhibition also paved the way for the creative practices of artists today, which are very much characterized by and also recognized for establishing multidisciplinary communities as an alternative way of organization, or creating collaborative artworks as an alternative mode of production, organizing joint exhibitions and festivals as an alternative form of display, and utilizing public spaces as an alternative venue for exhibitions, meetings, and discussion. So the younger current generation of video artists shows a concern with the practice of life, for instance, through collaborative projects with local communities. They also demonstrate an orientation towards the future through the experimentation with new technologies and simulations of or scenarios for a better society. And this could be seen as a fourth characteristic, utopian orientation. So I will come back to the impact or some of the continuations between this first generation and the younger generation of new media artists. All right, so for now we can keep these in mind when looking at and interacting with the artworks. So we can ask, well, how do these work disrupt the conventions of dedicated art spaces? How do they engage with everyday life, politics, and society? How do they provide creative innovation? And how or to what extent are they offering visions for a better world? In addition, I want to introduce one more relevant idea before going into some concrete examples. So I mentioned that meaning is generated not so much through the arts objects themselves, but through the creative process in which the interaction with the audience plays a crucial part. Also, the innovative aspect is not about the use of technology as such, but about establishing connections with politics and life, including social, cultural, and religious traditions. And I think this is very much encapsulated in the idea of Singapore-based art historian David Teh. I'm not sure whether he's in the audience, but yeah, thanks for giving me this inspiration, who has done research about video art in Southeast Asia, especially Thailand. So Teh conceptualizes video not merely as a technology or a tool of communication and information, but as a program. This idea of program is derived from Willem Flusser's concept of the program of photography. But according to Teh, the program of video refers to a social process, this is a quote, a process of mediumship that is not merely a channel, but a channeling that may be corporeal, social, and spiritual. So I think this offers a comprehensive approach that is not restricted to the study of video images, but also addresses the accessibility, production, distribution, and consumption of video, video's interaction and differences with other media, and the local conventions and history of video in specific, including Southeast Asian contexts. So, in line with this idea, I acknowledge that the history of video in Southeast Asia is closely related to local styles and genres of corporeal, social, and spiritual channeling. And I think this is also what makes the Southeast Asian contribution to the art world or to the Vanguard in the digital age interesting, unique, and important. So yeah, final idea also to keep in mind while exploring the works in this show is how or to what extent do the works facilitate continuities and changes in the way people engage with bodies, mind, and society, and also nature and spirituality. All right, let's now go into some examples from the show. So as you know, the See Me, See You exhibition consists of 2 parts, each highlighting the works of five video artists from Southeast Asia. And I think it's also the way in which the works are grouped together makes sense. So in my view, I think in the first part we saw artists making clear statements in line with the 4 Vanguard characteristics, while the works in the second part, the current show, also provide some really interesting, very thought-provoking examples of corporeal, social, and spiritual channeling. So let's just have a few examples from each of the shows. Just very briefly, and again, the good thing is today we do have 3 artists, so later maybe they may want to complement or may want to give a slightly different view about their works. But yeah, this work is from the first part of the show, a clear example of video art testing and teasing the conventions of the art world, including notions of the autonomy of institutions and works. So in How to Explain Art to a Bangkok Kok by Thai artist, curator and critic Apinan Poshananda, he presents an installation that had video footage of one of the artist's students explaining the meaning of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa to a flock of chickens and turkeys. So the use of video was a provocation to question the authority of the art canon and conventional creative media, such as painting in the case of the Mona Lisa. It also mocked hierarchies in the art world, as expressed in the differences in status between the teacher and their students, represented by the chickens. I think a good example of reconnection with the praxis of life is Sin of Apathy by Singapore video artist Ching Nai Wei. In this video installation, there are 6 figures representing 6 different forms of human sins or crises: war, disease, poverty, famine, environmental disaster, the plight of refugees. Normally people are familiar with these crises from the mass media, but it remains a question to what extent those messages really sink in, especially nowadays with abundance of information and communication. But the artist explores the creative possibility of installation and video by fully immersing the audience in a darkened room in which they are surrounded by the sounds and visuals of no less than 12 monitors. So the work becomes a critique of the inadequate news coverage by the mass media and the lack of empathy by media consumers, as well as a test case for exhibition visitors to examine their ability to process information and confront and possibly shake off their apathy. Every work of art, of course, whether it's painting or sculpture or performance or installation, is meant to trigger engagement of audiences. But as mentioned, in the work of the pioneers of Southeast Asian video art, audiences are meant not only to visually or intellectually engage, but also to bodily interact and become part of the yet unfinished creative process. So I think all of the artworks in the exhibition display features of this type of interactivity. And I think this is also very prominent in 3 of the other works from the first part of the show. This is actually the title piece of the show, Jean-Marie Siyuko's See You, See Me, choose by another artist from the Philippines, Johnny Manahan, and The Medium is the Message, after Marshall McLuhan, by Malaysian artist Baharudin Mohammed Arus. So let me just focus on the title piece of the exhibition, See You, See Me, Revenge of the Giraffe. So as This is actually a quote from the curators of the show, because I think it perfectly captures what the work does. So they say, the curators say, in Siyuko's performative works, she's seldom the only performer. She often enlists the audience to be on the stage as well. As collaborating and connecting with others form a critical part of her practice, the video component of Siyuko's work is not just a means of documentation, but also a device that establishes a relationship between the observer and the observed. End of the quote. So also here, we see an artist who not just used the new technology as a recording tool or a consumer device, but stretching its creative possibilities and social implications. So this work was created well before the invention of the selfie stick, but it already showed an intuition of the communicative potential of unusual camera angles, as well as the risk of camera surveillance. So the interaction between viewer participant and the giraffe installation were captured on CCTV and live streamed to a different room for other exhibition visitors to watch and reflect on. So I think a very playful work of art that marked the transition from mass media to truly public, privatized or mobile media with their own specific social-cultural and ultimately also political dimensions. And similarly, Bacharuddin Mohammed Arus and Johnny Manahan, their work also makes audiences experience and reflect on video's capacity to channel and change everyday life. I think all of them were also inspired by Marshall McLuhan's famous "Medium is the message," which is often quoted and also used as a source of inspiration by artists. But yeah, also that that notion of the medium is the message. That triggers a lot of questions and debate in itself, of course. So let's now move to more detailed and specific notions of the corporeal, social, and spiritual channeling as expressed in the artworks of the current show, the second part of the show that opens today. Of course, these three types of channeling are far from mutually exclusive. But at the same time, we may find works in which one form of channeling may be more prominent than the others. So I think an important and interesting example of corporeal channeling is Indonesian video art pioneer Krishnamurti's 12 Hours in the Life of Agung Rai, the dancer. So I think it's telling that he explicitly mentioned that the key character in this video installation, Agung Rai, is a dancer. In performing arts, the human body is the central medium. But Murti seems to play with the paradox that this is not a recording of a performance on a stage. Instead, he seems to say that to a large extent, because of the introduction of flexible mobile media such as handheld cameras, everyday life and culture has become a stage, with people and their gestures and behavior becoming the performers and the performances. The title also emphasizes that the work is about real life, real time and lived experience, not the specific limited times, spaces and settings of theatrical or cinematic genres. This work is not meant as a documentary about a dancer, but in my view more as a mediation about what it means to have our bodies mediated 24/7, what it does to our sense of self and belonging. So in that sense, it's also meaningful to have a performer from Bali as the main character, considering how strongly dance is connected with local cultural, ritual, and an identity. So we could ask whether or to what extent the focus on video as an integrated part of everyday life takes away, strengthens, or changes the aura or the status of Agung Rai as a respected performer. Here's another work by Krishnamurti. I will go into some more detail of a third work, which I will present later by Krishnamurti. I think it's also no surprise, sorry, maybe I'll go one back. It's also no surprise that the body and performance in the video installation of Malaysian-based Ray Langenbeck who's an academic as well as a practitioner of performance art, that he puts body and performance as a crucial part of the video installation. So in the video installation presented in the exhibition, the language lesson, to me it presents an unconventional and quite puzzling language lesson indeed. To me it even makes this question, which language is being spoken? What lesson is being taught? The installation presents talking heads on two different monitors. So on the one hand, the heads feel very disembodied, but on the other hand, they have a strong physical presence on the screen. There may or may not be a miscommunication between the character speaking English, performed by Ray himself, on the first monitor, and the character on the other monitor speaking Malay. But this communication or miscommunication may be caused not so much because of a difference in language, because of the very mediation of the characters. That disembodiment may refrain them from using other strategies that are crucial in any form of communication, including intercultural dialogue, including body language, gestures, touch, smell, etc. So one of the things the work may suggest is that we miss out and lose some of these skills in other sensory aspects of communication because of the highly mediated and possibly also rather sterile media environment in which we are living today. At the same time, however, the work may also suggest that mediation can also bring a heightened self-awareness or a sense of self and others in a highly complex world. An interesting form of social channeling can be found in the work Hoping to Hear From You Soon by Indonesian multimedia artist Heri Dono. And in this installation, he presents one of the most important everyday spaces of sociability in Indonesia, and especially in a place like Yogyakarta, the warung or food stall, which are really, commonplace in the streets of Indonesian cities. So during the authoritarian New Order regime of Suharto, when this work was created, the warung was also a place where political discussion took place by ordinary citizens, and solidarity and resistance was nurtured that would eventually contribute to the fall of Suharto in 1998. But at the same time, there was also a risk, potential risk of undercover intelligence personnel visiting warung to secretly overhear any of the conversation. And I think that, Heri Dono's video projections on the outside of the warung tent seem to play with the role of new media to turn the private public and the public private. It clearly establishes also a connection with Japanese shadow puppet theater, in which the screen also functions as a mediation between the two different worlds, real world and the shadow world. And in the case of Dono's work, it blurs the distinctions between the private and the public, the social and the political, the secure and the threatening. Here's another work, a very recent, and it's still ongoing, right? The exhibition in Yogyakarta. Very interesting, very important, because it also presents some of the other earlier work by Heri Dono, including some of the work I think that couldn't be shown during the New Order. So all the artists in this exhibition respond to the social and political dimensions of the media during that time. These are issues we're still grappling with today. And you find a comprehensive overview with a timeline of some of the important media developments in the region on the National Gallery Singapore's website. So I think in the context of Heri Dono's work, it's important to know that until the 1980s, for instance, state-owned TVRI, Television of the Republic of Indonesia, was the only domestic television service available to the Indonesian public. It was bound to censorship, compulsory and rather dull government broadcast. There were also quota on important materials, programs from elsewhere. The government could broadcast its television messages to most part of the archipelago via the domestic Palapa satellite, launched in 1976. And video, also elsewhere in Southeast Asia, was introduced in the mid-1970s amidst cultures of control, propaganda, censorship. But in Indonesia, it also provided televisual content to those parts of the archipelago that didn't have access to broadcast television. It also gave alternatives to the programs of the state broadcaster and also alternatives later to commercial television channels. Probably another important thing to consider is that until the early 1990s, video was a luxury item in Southeast Asia, very much restricted to the urban middle class. They bought their video recorders not only to watch films and television programs, but also to show their purchasing power and their social status to others. So there's also a material aspect to it. The introduction of digital video cameras in the late 1990s made it possible for larger segments of the population not only to consume existing materials, but also to record their own videos. And since the 2000s, there's been a dramatic increase in the distribution of digital video through mobile phone and the internet. And this has come with its own challenges, as we know, in the form of fake news and hoaxes, the breaching of personal data, social inclusion or intimidation, all issues to which especially younger artists are also responding with their creative work. But let's first finish with some really interesting work, and yeah, I'm very happy we had the opportunity just to have a quick chat earlier today. So the third form of channeling, spiritual channeling, which is, I think, very prominent in the work by Malaysian artist Hasnul Saidon. So this work is titled In the Precious Garden. And it consists of Sufi text in calligraphy on a round cloth in the shape of a mandala, surrounded by 3 monitors with different speed, with a 3-channel video on them. I understand it was dedicated to the birth of his daughter, also by the 13th century text of a Sufi mystic called Rumi, and the teachings of a Sufi leader, Shaykh Qadir al-Jilani. Sufism is a mystical form of Islam which emphasizes a very personal connection and also an inward search for God. I think in this work, yeah, this search is partially channeled through video sounds and images. So in this case, technology and tradition and belief can go together. They do not necessarily exclude one another. And I think this is really one of the important contributions from Southeast Asia to video creativity and criticality, which I suppose in the West has been very much dominated by secular themes and approaches. But here we definitely also see this notion of spiritual channeling, connections with religion, being embodied by this work. In another work in this exhibition, Vincent Liao's Dream World, we see an installation of television monitors and trees from steel and concrete pillows, which may also suggest connections between video and the mind, or rather the unconscious, a dream world, which can develop into new organic forms through video, and is also represented by the trees, the iron trees in the installation. Whilst this is also a critique about the rapidly developing urban environment, but in this case, you know, maybe video within this environment can still provide a channeling for connections with mind and creating some form of sanity as well. All right. Yeah, so as mentioned, the various forms of channeling and the avant-garde characteristics are not mutually excluding, but actually mutually strengthening. And I want to give just one example of a work beyond the exhibition. And it's meant to give you an idea of the broader oeuvre of the video artists from the region. And it's also meant as a tribute to Krishnamurti, who passed away a few months ago. And he, as I mentioned, he was my mentor of video art. And I think he has also very much nurtured the growth of a new generation of video artists in Southeast Asia. So one of his main sources of inspiration is Korean video art pioneer Nam June-paik, who in one of his iconic works attempted to turn the cold and distant medium of television into a hot and interactive device by placing a magnet on a television screen. The magnet turned media consumers into media producers, as it allowed them to distort and reshape the images on the screen. So this was meant as an alternative to the images reflecting the commercial and ideological interest of inaccessible, top-down oriented institutions with a monopoly on television production and broadcasting. From the work and writings of another video art pioneer, Bill Viola from the US, Krishna also learned that video art is not about the use of advanced technology, but about sharing a vision or thought. And he agrees with Viola that the artistic media and video arts are not the camera or the screen, but the human experiences and notions of time that are generated by this form of art. So according to Krishna, people's capacity to think, memorize, and react intuitively steers what he calls video sprouts, kachamba video, or the ability to edit, record, and play images in their mind. So video art functions as a trigger, a pemicu in Indonesian, that stimulates people's imagination and helps video sprouts to develop into a full-grown tree of life, Poyon Hayat. And it's these analogies between the video camera and the human mind that makes video art Murti's medium of preference. And I think these ideas, these concepts, probably are very relevant also in exploring the works of the other artists today. And they may also share some of these ideas, but I would be really interested to hear from them as well. So, yeah, just because of limited time, let me just focus on one of his landmark installations titled Video Spa. And in the earlier conversation today, I was so happy that the curators of the show actually mentioned that when they met Krishna in Indonesia, this was actually the work he wanted to talk about the whole time. So I'm very happy that I actually picked this work to say something more about him and his creative ideas and practices. So an interactive work that I think really merges, forms of corporeal, social, and spiritual channeling. And he himself presented Video Spa as a video therapy by Krishnamurti, or a therapy for everyday living. It offered its audiences therapeutic experiences through a mix of video images, performance elements, and audience participation. And it integrated Hindu-Buddhist elements, reflecting his own background. He had a mixed Javanese, Balinese background. Hindu-Buddhist elements mixed with technologies, cultural artifacts, and social experiences that Murti brought back from his many journeys, including the technology, the video and computer technology, poems and advertisements in English, beauty and health treatments, including spa, and various recreational activities. So both in Jakarta and Ubud, the audience was allowed to enter the exhibition space only individually or in pairs with the two of them, in order to enhance this personal video therapy experience and sense of participation. Visitors were positioned in relaxing chairs in front of the three screens, and in Ubud they were even given a massage. The exhibition in Bali was opened with a night performance in which video screens were placed behind a swimming pool. And yeah, this is not with the swimming pool, but you can see visitors lying down in the relaxing chairs on the right. But yeah, going back to the pool performance or video screening, the water in the pool was decorated with flowers, and hotel guests were given a foot bath of water and flowers as well as a massage. And once the projection started, the participants were even instructed to enter the pool and swim in front of the video screens. So in this way, the video imagery was expanded from the flat video screens into the space where the audience was situated. Murthy's installation is a multi-layered work that can be interpreted in many different ways. There's references to Hindu-Buddhist culture, there's a mediating figure, there's a Buddhist monk, there's lotus flowers. The sound, of course, is also very important. That's also one aspect. We were talking about it earlier today. These are video works, video art, but a very substantial aspect of video art in many cases is also the sound. It can really, completely change the ambience or any interpretation of the work. According to Murthy, the water also represented the concept of wudu in Islam, so the ritual ablutions performed before praying. At the same time, he was also inspired by international popular culture, particularly the Blue Lagoon, a US film from the 1980s, about which people from my generation still remember, about two shipwrecked children who eventually develop a romantic relationship with each other on a lush tropical island. So Murthy combined all of these different elements to invite the audience on a journey to heaven or paradise. So the catalogue presents video spa not only as an alternative spa treatment for the eyes, the mata, but also for the mind, the mata hati. So this suggests that the installation links together three different human aspects: the senses, the body, and the mind. This comprehensive approach is shaped by ideas from Islam and from Hindu-Buddhist culture, as well as the media ecological reality of modern everyday life. The installation can be conceived as a form of media therapy, as it's not only about people trying to find enlightenment and escape samsara through reflection and meditation, but also about curing people of the ordeals of domestic and international television culture. The video, with its slow, aesthetic, and relaxing images and sounds of waterfalls, pools, flowers, and animals, is meant as an alternative to the fast, noisy, and intimidating messages of contemporary television and other media, including commercials. Agung Hujatnikajanong observes that the imaginary images in video spa also address the problem of physicality in modern society. This is a quote, where the function of the physical body is no longer autonomous, but controlled by its psychological relations with the world of imagery. So this context explains Murthy's combined treatment of the body, the senses, and the mind as a remedy for the mental and physical disorder caused by mass media, by social media, etc. So again, I think a great example of how video art can combine corporeal, social, and spiritual channeling. All right, for the last part of my presentation, I also want to briefly look into some examples of the younger generation. So, yeah, although the examples provided so far all test the boundaries of the art world, including its institutions, of course, as we also, witnessing now, they're still displayed, of course, in the relatively conventional setting of an art museum or gallery. However, if we look at the careers of the various artists discussed, we see that they've also worked in public spaces and collaborated with local groups and communities, or have inspired other younger artists to do so. And I think this feature reflects the Vanguard characteristics of breaking with the autonomy of art, re-establishing connections with the praxis of life, presenting creative innovation, as well as producing utopian scenarios for a better, more just and sustainable society. For instance, Singapore-based artist Vincent Liao was involved in various alternative art collectives, including the Artist Village. And his interest in the notion of the collective seemed to have arisen from visits elsewhere in the region, including Yogyakarta, but also from his experience in the Artist Village, of course, which was the brainchild of fellow artist Tang Da Wu. This was based in an urban village or kampung in Singapore and meant as a place for collaborative work, community interaction and resistance against some of the social and environmental impact of top-down urban development projects. In 1998, he also set up another collective, and I'd love to learn more about this collective as well, the Plastic Kinetic Worms, which was an experimental, not-for-profit space and collective that facilitated international collaborations and artist residencies, amongst others, including, as I understand, an annual Worms Festival and also an art journal titled Vehicle. And this collective was active until 2010. Of course, the sustainability of these initiatives can be an issue, but at the same time, as art experiments, they are not necessarily meant to last forever. And normally we do see a relatively organic development where existing initiatives are replaced by others from a newer generation with their own approaches. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Harry Dono, for instance, has been a key figure in changing the Yogyakarta Biennale format. One day before the start of the third Biennale in 1992, he set up a counter-biennale titled the Biennale Experimental Art, together with various other younger artists at that time, including Danang Kristanto, Edi Hara, and Honghari Wahyu. Biennale was a play on the word biennale, and it means rebellious, uncontrollable, disobedient, wild, maybe it has other connotations. But the group of artists, all in their early 30s then, protested against various aspects of the official biennale, especially the limitation of participation to artists aged 35 years and older, and restrictions to the use of the medium of painting only. And one of the most discussed and characteristic works of the protest event was Harry Dono's Kuda Biennale, or Wild Horse. And unlike the paintings displayed at the official Biennale, I understand your work was exhibited in open public space, crossed a range of art genres and media, and also involved multiple participants, including craftspeople and just, ordinary Indonesians. And this and other works in the Counter Biennale dramatically influenced the format and the management of the Yogyakarta Biennale as it is happening today. And actually, the current one, I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but it's actually taking place in rural areas, right? So these artists and also other artists in the exhibition have been mentors of a younger generation of Southeast Asian video artists who have set up their own spaces and collectives. And these collectives are very much characterized by interdisciplinary collaboration, with their members contributing many different skills, including and beyond art practice and art history, including media studies, history, social political science, anthropology, engineering, health science, agriculture. And they reflect on and sometimes provide also practical solutions to some of the main issues the world is grappling with today, including climate change, gender inequity, forced migration. So in the final part of my presentation, I will just give you two quick examples I'm most familiar with, although of course similar initiatives can also be found elsewhere in the region. And the examples are both from Yogyakarta, House of Natural Fiber and XX Lab. So House of Natural Fiber, or HONF, is really one of the drivers of an Indonesian post-authoritarian avant-garde of the digital age, together with other art collectives. In Jakarta, there's Forum Lenteng, Ruang Rupa. In Jogja, there's also Ruang Mes 56. There's Common Room Networks Foundation in Bandung, Jatiwangi Art Factory in Jatiwangi. There's WAFT in Surabaya. In the case of HONF, they've created their own communities, which often in interaction with local society produce collaborative project or process-based art to be displayed in galleries as well as public outdoor spaces. One of their ongoing projects, for instance, is Micronation, Democratizing the Energy, a project inspired by public outrage of a cut to fuel subsidies that happened in 2012. And they've been responding to this issue in ways that are in line with HONF's mission to bridge art, science, and free technology. So with that project, one of the aims is to explore alternative, cheaper, and renewable energy sources. And it includes collaborations with farming communities and on-site experiments in the Yogyakarta special region. So three basic components, for instance, are fermentation distillation machines to transform hay into ethanol, satellite receivers to obtain data related to agricultural production, such as data on weather, climate, and seasonal conditions, and also supercomputers to process data on agricultural conditions, ethanol production, and food and energy sustainability. Apart from the devices that can turn waste into fuel and can be displayed as art installations in their own right, a key aspect, I think, of this project is to give farmers access to data, information that was previously restricted. The final example is a spin-off collective called XX Lab, which was founded in 2013. This is an all-female collective. Its members include HONF's co-founder Irene Agrivina, and their concepts and projects relate very much to gender, hacking strategies, open source hardware and software, and the reappropriation of daily practices and objects. So like HONF, XX Lab explores previously undetected or understudied links between waste management, food and fuel shortage or unaffordability, and poverty reduction, and seeks artistic as well as innovative solutions. So one example is Wati, Domestic Hacking Project. Wati is a popular girl's name, often used in school textbooks, and presented as kind of quintessential Indonesian woman, but they try to respond to that with their experiments with technology and art. So while the domestic chores such as cooking were previously very much positioned as a female task, the Wati project attempts to expand the space, in this case literally the space of the kitchen, and turn it into a laboratory for turning food into all sorts of things, including fashion. So it has experimented with spices, food waste, and other microorganisms to make fabric dye, for instance. and fermented soybean and other types of organisms to create fabric dye and also to create fashion. So one example of this is a project called Soya Couture or Soya Culture, which uses digital and biological hacking methods to design haute couture dresses and other items. And these are made from leather-look biofabric based on the liquid waste of tempeh and other soy industries that pollute rivers and soils. Other products made by the collective are soy waste-based edible cellulose, biofuel, and fertilizer. And the development of businesses using these techniques could potentially, alleviate some of the economic problems in low-income areas. And this project was actually also received international recognition. It was awarded a prestigious European Commission-supported competition in Linz, Austria. So just to come to a few conclusions. I just want to conclude my presentation with these two examples to show you how far new media art has come in Southeast Asia and in the world. Art production has expanded from video to other new media, including the internet and the mobile phone, and even agriculture and biology, to critically and creatively explore all the important issues of our times, such as climate change. And these developments have been made possible by the courageous, experimental, and visionary efforts by the video artists in the two exhibitions of the National Gallery Singapore. So, I trust you agree with me that they are receiving the honors that they truly deserve. And I wish everyone a lot of fun in exploring and interacting with the works. So that's all from me for now. Yeah, thank you.